Here is That Which Is with John Roger. That Which Is presented by MSIA, the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, a movement dedicated to awakening the spiritual heart within each of us. John Roger is the founder and spiritual advisor of MSIA, the founder and president of the Institute for Individual and World Peace, founder of the Heartfelt Foundation, and other organizations dedicated to improving people's lives. John Roger is a best-selling author, and he has been teaching and conducting seminars for many years. Right after John Roger speaks, we'll tell you how you can obtain more information about MSIA.
We have our own devil, if you will, or our own demons, if you will. And there's no reference point in there because we haven't seen God's face to know that God's goodness is ultimately for us all the time. And so we hear a voice or a feeling and we think, that's got to be it because I haven't ever had anything before and I got the first thing, so that's it. And I go, wait, time, check it out. But what if that's God? He'll tell you again. What if it's not God? Pass. But what if I'm missing? If you really want to see if it is, then check it out, because God speaks of the inner kingdom and the direction inwardly, and the drawing back up into God, and the touching of God's heart to your heart, which is the same heart, and you come awake here in this world, and the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And we become a spiritualized being in the physical body, strange but true. And it radiates out from our countenance, not from our physical body because it still has a dullness, but it gets through the skin because it's a higher vibration. And it gets through the eyes because it's a higher vibration. And it has a hard time getting through the mouth because it's a lower vibration. So by the time we try to tell somebody how wonderful we are, we're bragging. When you try to tell somebody that it's so, it's called conceit. And so you finally go, and they go, I get it. So you want to be quiet all the time, and then you're accused by the other person's thought mind of not loving them because you don't talk to them, but then when you do talk to them, you're accused of saying things wrong. So what happens is this thought process either overloads your information, they give you so much that you're just swamped, and you say, I can't work the stock market, you do it. Or underload you, where the wife will say to the husband, well, if you really want to wash the clothes, just put all the whites together. And so he washes the clothes, and he brings them in, and she said, you put the wrong kind of cloth together with the wrong kind of things. And now look at this, and you dried it with too much heat, and it shrunk my favorite blouse. And he's gone, oh, man, I didn't know it was so technical. Well, it isn't. She just gave under-information. When you leave the physical body and traverse the inner realms, and by that it could be out-of-the-body travel or deep inside of you so you're not aware of this world, the spiritual beings look at you and they see grotesque, misshapen forms because who you really are inside has been perverted and corrupted and twisted. And you can keep a facade out there of how wonderful it all is, and inside it's scheming and it's dirty and it's filthy and it's corrupt. And you get to sometimes see that. Some people see it as a nightmare. They get up above what this body's been living, and in the spiritual form they get to see it, and it comes at them as a monster or as stickiness or as something else, and you wake up in a cold sweat just screaming, and it's, oh my God, I had this terrible nightmare, and I felt like I was dying, and they were dying, and somebody was dying, and they were going to get me, and I tried to run, and the bear was on me, and I couldn't, I was trying, then I fell over the cliff, and then when I fell out of bed and hit the floor, I woke up. And we're saying, what is all that? That is the psychological realness in us that is tied to the spiritual nature inside of us. And we are seeing what we psychologically have done out here in this world with our thoughts and our corruption from the spiritual place. And we see it, and we are told in the Spirit, you are corrupting your life. and then we don't want to believe it. I've worked with a person who outwardly is loving and jovial, and you say, golly, what a spiritual being. But yes, having these nightmares, same ones over and over and over and over, and they dealt with concentration camps and brutality. And it must be 7 years that the person was masquerading under spiritual information, and inside he was a wolf, corrupting and grabbing and manipulating. And finally one day he said, can you explain to me what this dream is? I said, yeah, it's you. He said, I never did those things to those people. I said, you didn't, then why are you seeing that? Why are you seeing those things? Why are you having those dreams? Why are you dreaming that instead of this? Why are you dreaming negativity instead of positiveness? He says, well, how did I do it? How am I doing it? I says, well, you see, you go out and you start talking about the movement of spiritual inner awareness and all the love, and you and I are pretty good friends because I love you no matter what you do. You just can't do it around me. So you go do it around other people, and then you use your one-upsman on all sorts of people, and you use it to get the women in bed, to have your way with them, and then all of a sudden you're more spiritual than you thought you were, and so you have to leave them because after all you're now going to be celibate. Well, everybody's celibate between sexual intercourses, depending upon who you're going for. Finally, one day, he came to me, and this was a person who said, I am afraid to sleep because the dreams are grotesquely terrible. I said, would you just look at yourself? He said, I'm really terrified. I said, what you're looking at is terrifying, and who you are is loving, and you've got the thing mixed up and you're being led astray out of your own mind, and you got to come back into balance and control. And he said, what do I do? And I said, well, how about you and I just praying together? And he said, you don't teach prayer. I said, yeah, I do. Teach all sorts of things. They just teach what's necessary. In other words, if there's a fire burning, you don't throw gasoline on it, you throw water on it. Then when you want to start a fire, you put a little gasoline, throw a match in, and you get a fire. It depends on what you're doing. So he said, do we have to kneel down? I said, you might want to, I don't have to. And he said, why not? I said, because I'm not seeing those things. And he said, well, why would I kneel down? I said, so you can get a better look, because they seem to be pretty low down stuff that you're looking at. He goes, can I just sit in a chair with you? And I said, yeah, but not in the same chair with me, but you can sit in the chair. And he said, but that's a good idea. Could I sit in the chair with you? And I was thinking,